The hum of the engines had lulled her into a peaceful slumber. Clara Jensen, a 31-year-old travel photographer, had tucked herself against the window in row 12, her scarf folded under her cheek, her camera bag safely tucked beneath the seat in front of her. She had boarded the flight from Lisbon to New York after 2 months in Europe, exhausted yet content, ready to finally return home. The rhythmic vibration of the plane against the clouds was her lullaby, drowning out the chatter of passengers and the faint clinking of ice in plastic cups. She dreamt of the ocean, blue horizons melting into skies, when the intercom cracked with urgency. A voice, shaky and unsteady, pierced her sleep. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking." It was not the polished, calm tone passengers were accustomed to. The words were uneven, breaths too heavy. Something in that voice made her open her eyes, her heart skipping. Around her, others lifted their heads too, sensing the same dread. "We have a situation," the captain continued. "If there is any pilot on board, please come to the cockpit immediately." Gasps spread through the cabin like wildfire. Clara's blood ran cold. She sat up straight, her chest tightening. Pilots never said things like that unless something was terribly, terribly wrong. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft whimper of a baby 2 rows ahead and the muttered prayers of a man clutching his rosary. Clara looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to rise. Surely among 200 passengers, there must be someone with flying experience. But seconds stretched into agonizing minutes, and no one moved. Her hands trembled in her lap. She wasn't a pilot, but she knew someone who was. Her father, Captain Robert Jensen, 35 years with Delta Airlines before retirement. A man who had raised her not just with love, but with stories of the skies, lessons about trust, calm, and control. He had taken her to simulators as a child, teaching her how to steady her hands, how to read the panels, how to breathe when everything felt like it was falling apart. He had laughed when she, barely 12, landed the simulation better than most trainee pilots. But Clara wasn't her father. She was a photographer, a dreamer with lenses and light, not a woman who could command an aircraft carrying hundreds of lives. And yet, as the flight attendants hurried down the aisles, their faces pale and tense, Clara's heart pounded with a truth she couldn't ignore. She was the closest thing this plane had to a pilot. When she reached the front of the cabin, the head flight attendant, Marissa, stopped her with desperate eyes. Do you have flying experience?" she asked, her voice a whisper of hope. Clara hesitated. "Not officially, but my father was a captain. He taught me a lot. Simulators, controls, emergency protocols. I might know enough." Marissa's breath hitched, her hand gripping Clara's arm like it was the last rope dangling over an abyss. "It's more than anyone else on board. Please, come." They hurried to the cockpit. Inside, chaos reigned. The captain was slumped in his seat, his skin pale, his chest rising shallowly. A paramedic passenger was already kneeling beside him, checking his pulse, shaking his head. "He's alive," the medic said, "but unconscious. Stroke, maybe. He can't fly." The co-pilot, barely in his late 20s, sat frozen, his face ashen. His hands gripped the yoke, but they trembled violently. I can't do this alone," he stammered. "Not across the Atlantic. Not in these winds." Clara stepped forward, her own fear threatening to swallow her. "All help." The co-pilot turned, his eyes widening at the sight of this woman in a travel scarf and jeans. But desperation left no room for disbelief. He nodded quickly. "Sit." Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Always sit with confidence, Clara. The plane feels your fear, but it also feels your calm." She slid into the captain's seat. The cockpit smelled of burnt coffee and tension. Buttons blinked like impatient stars. She placed her hands on the controls, and something inside her steadied. Not confidence exactly, but memory. Muscle memory carved by years of her father's teachings. "What's your name?" the co-pilot asked, his voice thin. "Clara." "Okay, Clara, we've lost the captain. We're in turbulent air, and ATC hasn't responded to my last call. You said your father was a pilot. 35 years. Then you know more than most." He handed her the headset. Her palms slicked with sweat as she put it on. A crackle of static greeted her, Then a calm voice from air traffic control, Flight 297, do you copy? She inhaled, then pressed the transmitter. This is Clara Jensen, passenger, assisting the first officer. The captain is incapacitated. A pause, then the voice returned, firmer now. Understood, Clara. We'll guide you through this. Can you handle the aircraft? Her father's laugh rang in her mind, warm, teasing. You can handle anything, kiddo. The sky is just another canvas. She gripped the yoke. I'll try. Dash dash dash. The hours that followed were a blur of storm clouds and whispered prayers. Clara's body shook with adrenaline as she followed instructions, adjusting altitude, managing speed, stabilizing in the crosswinds. The co-pilot fed her guidance, but often froze, paralyzed by the weight of command. Each time, Clara forced herself to breathe, to remember the simulator lessons with her father. Don't fight the storm. Dance with it. Passengers in the cabin sat in terrified silence, unaware that their lives now rested in the hands of a woman who had never flown an actual plane in her life. And yet, something miraculous happened. The more she focused, the more natural it became. Her hands moved with uncanny instinct. When the co-pilot's panic spiked, she spoke with a calmness that surprised even herself. It wasn't her flying the plane. It was her father, through her. Dash dash dash. Finally, the words everyone longed to hear came through the headset. Clara, we've cleared a runway for you at Shannon Airport, Ireland. Weather is rough, but manageable. We'll talk you down step by step. Do you copy? Her throat tightened. Ireland. Home was still oceans away, but safety was finally within reach. I copy. The descent was the longest 15 minutes of her life. Winds buffeted the wings, alarms screamed in protest, and every second felt like balancing on the edge of disaster. Clara's knuckles whitened on the yoke. Steady, steady, the voice guided. Ease her down. Gentle. You've got this. The runway lights pierced the night like a promise. Cheers blurred her vision, but she held fast. At the last moment, her father's words returned once more. Don't land it, Clara. Let it land itself. You're just guiding it home. The wheels screeched against the tarmac. The plane jolted, rattled, then slowed. The cabin erupted in sobs, cheers, prayers. They were alive. Dash dash dash. When the plane finally stopped, Clara's hands slipped from the controls, trembling uncontrollably. The co-pilot turned to her, his eyes glistening. You just saved 200 lives. She shook her head, choking back tears. I didn't. My father did. Paramedics rushed aboard, tending to the captain, guiding passengers out. Clara lingered in the cockpit, staring at the seat where her father had once sat in countless flights. And for the first time in years, she whispered into the silence, I hope I made you proud, Dad. Dash dash dash. News of Flight 297 spread across the world. In hours, headlines called her the passenger who landed a plane. Strangers called her a hero. But for Clara, it was never about the world's applause. It was about a moment in row 12, when she had woken not just from sleep, but from doubt. She had always believed she was just a photographer. But that night, she discovered she carried the sky inside her too. The courage, the instinct, the love her father had left behind. When she finally stepped off the plane into the cool Irish night, she tilted her face to the sky. The stars shimmered like runways of light. And in her heart, she felt it, her father's hand resting over hers, steady as ever.